Welcome back to Laser Engraving 911. So from the title of the video, you might have thought that we were going to somehow do some powder coating with laser beams. Well, in a way, yeah, we are. Today on Laser Engraving 911, I am going to show you how to use the same paint that they use for powder coating bottles like this, or like this, to add some color to all your engravings. So stay tuned, buckle up, and let's get into it. All right, school's in session, folks. All right, so I'm not a powder coating expert, but just to explain kind of what the process is here is, you know, actually, I think what I'll do is I'll draw an upside down diagram. This is going to be hilarious. All right, so powder coating is basically the process of coating a metal with a thermoplastic paint that's like in a really fine powder, and it melts at a certain degrees. It bonds to the metal. And we've all laser engraved probably Yetis and Hydro Flasks. Those are all powder coated. Polar Camels, Arctics, all those vacuum insulated cups that we engrave all the time and use all the time, those are all powder coated, and they use a very specific thermoplastic paint. So really quick, the way I understand it is basically you've got a powder coating gun, and give me a break here because I'm drawing upside down. You've got a powder coated gun with probably some kind of hopper on it, you know, I don't know. And it's hooked up to like a box that creates a high voltage electronic charge. So, right? And what happens is the gun produces a electric charge field around this area right here. And the powder that you put in here, the paint, we'll call it powder coating paint, right, goes down here. And then as it gets shot out here, it gets electrostatically charged. And then you've got your object that you're trying to paint here. Let's just say it's a cup, and that's a steel cup. And somehow that cup has been grounded to the box here. So you've got it grounded. And as that paint flies out, and really fine powder paint, since this is positively charged, or this is charged and this is grounded, the paint's gonna stick to the metal. And all those little fine particles are gonna coat all this metal, and you probably gotta turn it or have it on a little turner. And then after that, you're gonna take, once it's all covered in this powder paint, you're gonna take it over and you're gonna put it in some kind of oven, right? This is my oven. Look, I got the dials, everything. You're gonna put it in the oven and bake it for some, you know, some amount of time, some amount of heat, and then when it comes out, it's going to go from looking like this to having a nice hard shell that protects the object, whether it's a machine part or a bottle, to looking like this. You get this nice coating, and I've seen all kinds of different types of powder coating where some of them feel shiny, some of them feel you know, kind of rough like this one, but there's a million different colors to pick from, but that's generally how I understand how powder coating works. So why are we sitting here talking about powder coating today? Well, I've always been interested in this kind of paint because it's a thermoplastic and it can melt, and I never really wanted to get into powder coating, but I thought to myself, what if we could use that paint to fill our engravings and then use the laser to melt the thermoplastic paint into the engraving, and would it get any good results? And after some testing, I'm pleased to say that yes, you can do that, and it gets great results. And that's what we're going to learn about at Laser Engraving 911 today. See, where should we start? We should start by showing you some examples of the finished product before we get into the technique on how to actually apply this paint to your engravings. One of the great things about this is that on one of my other videos, we talk about how to paint fill your engraving with acrylic paint. And with that process, there's masking, there's paint brushes to clean up, and then there's peeling off and weeding the mask. There's maybe another layer of, I think a lot of people have suggested that have watched the show to spray the engraving before you do the painting. Well, there's none of that with this. Now, the results are a little bit different, but they're still pretty outstanding. So let's go ahead and look at some different examples of things that I've used this technique on. So here is a box from Michael's Crafts that I used black powder coating paint on. And we're going to show some video of this being done and the process of how I did that. But can you see how nice and dark? I mean, it's like I paint filled it using the other technique, but I didn't use the other technique. I used this one. Let's check out something else. So here's a piece of wood. I wanted to get creative as I took a bunch of the colors and then filled the engraving with and did kind of a fade of different colors just to see how that would turn out. And that actually came out pretty cool. And this final example right here is a little bit more complex than some of the other examples, but I just wanted to see how far I could push this technique. So this was like a multi-layer engraving file, and you'll understand once I show you the process of maybe a little bit more about what I had to go through to get this all done, because we've got white, black, and red that I did here. But this one was fun. If any of you want to get a hold of me about the files that I used to create this, I'm happy to send them to you. Just shoot me an email and I can go into a little bit more detail about how I did this one. But for this Laser Engraving 911 episode, we're just going to do simple filling and simple color filling using this technique with one color. But you can really get creative with this, and I absolutely encourage all of you to try different techniques. And then last but not least, here is all the colors that I have that I purchased to use. So you can see I tried out all the different colors, and we'll go through the video watching how I did all of these as well. It's kind of painstaking to do all these at once. I don't know if that would ever call for it, but it was a good learning experience, and you can see all the different colors and how they look after they're done. And keep in mind, there was no masking involved in any of this, and no spraying of any kind of special treatment of the wood prior to adding the powder paint to my engraving. So let's get into it. Let's start talking about the process. Let's do it. All right, so this is just a piece of wood that I have engraved. Just put a couple of logos on so we can go through the process of how to apply the powder coating paint to your engraving after you engrave it. It's really important to remember that once you've engraved the object, whether it's a box or a piece of wood or a knife handle or whatever kind of piece it is, once this whole process will actually be done in the laser in place. So once you've set the object in there, you've engraved it, it's really important not to disturb the object. Don't touch it, don't move it, don't shift it. If you want to jig your object up so it's locked in place and it can't be moved, that would probably be best. Unless you have a really tight jig or it's registered perfectly or thrown up in the corner, and you know that you can take it out and do this and put it exactly in the place that it was, because what's going to happen is we're going to do our regular engraving. We're going to apply the powder into the engraving, and then we're going to run the job again, but at a lower power setting. So if you were to shift that during your application process, the laser will not hit exactly in the engraved area and it will not work. So the process goes like this. You've got your different powder coat paints wherever you get them from, whether you got a sample pack from me or you go out and buy your own or you have some laying around. You're going to go ahead and pick a color. For this one, I'm going to pick blue. And you really don't need that much, and of course it's dependent on how much space you need to fill, how much of the engraving you need to fill, but you'll find, I think after doing this a few times, that a little bit goes quite a long way. So I'm just going to tap some out here, kind of throughout the engraving, what I think is the appropriate amount. for this engraving. Just like that. And I know what you're thinking, oh my God, you just messed up the engraving. Nope, not a chance. So then we're going to take our, I just have this little paintbrush from Home Depot, and I'm just going to start pushing the powder into the engraving, like so. Okay? Hopefully I poured enough down there. If I didn't, I'll get some more, and I'm just kind of smearing it around, pushing it into the engraving, trying to get it, the powder even across all the engraving. I do think I need a little bit more for this large logo, so I'm going to add a little bit more. That's probably plenty. And I'm just going to keep kind of tamping it down into the engraving, trying to make sure I don't miss any spots. Maybe bring a little bit up here, tamp that down in his face. Okay, there we go. And when you think you've got it kind of evenly distributed into the engraving, we're going to go to the next step. So you're just going to set that brush aside. You're going to grab your hard card. I give out one of these aluminum business cards. I found this works really well rather than plastic, because plastic can create like a static charge and the powder's so fine it can stick to it. So this aluminum, anodized aluminum business card works great. So what I'm going to do now is similar to kind of like silk screening when they press the paint in through the screen, is we're just going to hold this card at like a 22-degree angle. You don't want to hold it like this. Don't want to have it like that. You know, somewhere between here and here. And I'm not putting a crazy amount of pressure on there. I'm just doing a sweep, pressing the powder into the engraving until it's nice and even to the top of the engraving. Okay, so let's try it. And that is it. So now you can see how much powder is left here. So you can either sweep that and put it back in your container, you can just dust it off. But that is what you are looking for. Don't worry about the powder over here and all around the engraving, because that will just get brushed off with the brush, little compressed air, and a little bit, maybe not even needed, a little light sand. Like it really just brushes right off. But that is what you want. And keep in mind, we would have done this in the machine, and then we would have run the job again at just enough power to melt the thermoplastic powder coat paint into the engraving. And then you've got a permanent paint fill just like that. So let's do it one more time on the other logo, just to show you that yes, you can get into the fine details of graphics and stuff. Now, with that, I did try and experiment, and you know, that's what these things take to figure out the process. I tried to do a really tiny logo on a knife. It was the U.S. Marines logo, and I tried to fill it with gold, and it was just too small to just get in there. I mean, we're talking like half the size of a dime. It didn't turn out as well as I'd like, so I think there is some form of limit, but this is really fine detail right here, and this process can handle this no problem. So let's go ahead and go on to filling this one with a different color. And these things, you want to make sure you clean this card off, and you want to make sure you tap your brush out before you go on to a new color, so you don't cross-contaminate colors. So that's just really easy. You can just take it off to the side, use the brush off your card, tap the brush a few times, and they're clean just like that. For this one, let's go ahead and do black. So we'll do black on this one. Just going to distribute some powder piles, just like that. Then take my brush, like we did before, just kind of start evenly distributing it. You see how I'm not touching the actual piece itself? This is the same thing you'd want to be doing in your laser. I'm not putting my hand on the piece. You really don't want to disturb it, because unless you have a really good way to line it up perfectly, again, that's totally fine. You can. But I just do it in place and don't touch the object. Don't move anything while you're doing it. And I'm really using a light touch for this. I'm not like smashing this in there. It's very gentle. Just kind of evenly distributing it. Get it maybe in that little detailed spot we were talking about. And then when I feel that it's pretty good, just set that aside. Do our little trick with the hard card, holding it at the right angle, not too much pressure. Just like that. Like that. And there we go. So that is all that powder is filled in there. You can see it filled into the engraving there. It's right up to the surface of the wood. And now this would be completely ready to be melted in there. And that is the process up close on how this is done. Couple of things to keep in mind. I have tried this on different materials. I tried it on all kinds of wood, and it works fantastic on flat wood. I would not recommend trying this technique on a curved surface or something, you know, because the paint needs to stay, the powder paint needs to stay in the engraving. And if you've got a curved surface, it's probably going to fall out the side. So this is really for flat surface applications. I've tried this technique on acrylic. It works fantastic on all different kinds of acrylic. Same process as you see here. I tried it on leather, thinking it would be great to color fill leather this way. Unfortunately, what happens with the leather is it doesn't bond really well to the leather. And then also, if you have something where it's like a patch where the leather like flexes, the thermoplastic doesn't adhere to it strong enough, and it actually starts to break apart in the leather. Metal is definitely not an option, because this powder coat paint will not bond to metal unless the metal is the same temperature as the melting. It all needs to happen at once. So for those of you with a fiber laser thinking that you can do this, engrave something in metal and then put some of this in there and use your fiber laser to melt it in, I didn't have much luck with that. Also, the fiber laser wavelength did not react well with this thermoplastic powder paint. So at this point, these are the two materials that I think this works for the best, are wood and acrylic. Now I think we should head on over to the actual laser and see some application, see me doing it in the laser, and I'm going to go ahead and show you some videos of it actually being done, and then we'll look at some close-ups of the final product, and we'll go on from there. Alright, so here we are over at the laser. We could go ahead and get our object set up and engrave as normal. You can use whatever setting you like to use for wood. I like to go pretty deep, but not crazy deep. No need for that. I'm only doing one pass on this. And I just let the machine go ahead and engrave the logo or graphic on as usual. And you can see my result after just a regular engraving is pretty standard. This is really cheap wood from Michael's Craft Store, so that's how it looks after it's engraved. It's not very dark. It's all kind of mismatched, and some parts are light and some parts are dark, and that's how it comes out. So now that we've got the engraving done, let's move on to the next part. Alright, so I've got my handy dandy brush. I've got my hard card ready to go. Just get that ready. And I'm going to go ahead and start with some, on this project I use the black thermoplastic powder coating paint, and I'm just applying it just like I showed you earlier, working it into the different parts of the engraving, being careful not to move the box. And then I'm using the hard card to press it into the engraving. Probably going to sweep most of it down towards the bottom there, so I have an extra little pile to work with, so I can fill in the lettering down there. And I'm just kind of sweeping it all over evenly, doing a little tap, And I'm going to do my hard card again down on the lower part. This is a pretty big graphic with lots of detail actually too, so I really wanted to make sure that I got all of that in there. Some of it I just sweeped off the edge and then vacuumed it up afterwards, no big deal. I got a little shop vac that works great. Alright, so here we are doing the second pass, and this pass is done at the same speed but at a much lower setting. So I'm only using 13% of my 120 watt laser's power. That setting may be different for you depending on what kind of laser you have and the wattage of your laser. But you want to get just enough setting to melt the thermoplastic powder into the engraving without obliterating it. That's the goal here. So some trial and error with your laser will be needed. Alright, so let's have a look at the almost finished product. This is exactly what it looks like right after it's done melting the powder coating paint into the engraving. Okay, now it's time for the big dust off, big reveal. So as you can see, I'm dusting off all the excess paint, and I'm just kind of using the same brush that I did to tamp it in there. And as I'm dusting it off, I'm just making sure I get as much as I can. And after you dust it off, all of you can, it's totally okay to use some compressed air or a little light sanding just to get rid of any residual dust. And here it is, folks. So I brought this into the photo booth so we could take a closer look at it. And we'll get the camera in up nice and close so you can see how it really looks in that wood. You can't see any of the wood underneath it. It's completely filled in. You can still see the kind of the grains of the wood where I engraved it, but it's like the powder coating paint just melts right into all those little grooves and stuff. And you know, looking at it, it's pretty amazing how it just fills all the spots. And the better job you do at filling in all the little details with the brush and the hard card, the better results you're going to get. And here we are with a time-lapse video of me doing the sample board. I tried to get as many colors as I could on the board and just do them all at once with the same exact process that you just saw me do on the last one. And this is what it looks like running the job. You can see on each one I had a little bit of powder left over, but it's all good. This is a great example. I went ahead and took the sample board inside of the photo booth. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at that. You know, I'm really happy with the way this turned out. I mean, you can see that on most of them I got all the paint in all the little crevices. This board cleaned up really nice. I did brush it off really good, hit it with some compressed air, and did a really light sanding over the top. And I'm not going to lie, I could have done a better job on the white for sure. You can see I missed some spots in the little laser star there. I'm really happy with the way these colors turned out. One of the cool things about this is if you want more color and you want the color to be even more vibrant, you can just do another sweep. Just put another layer of powder paint in there and run it again, and you can stack a couple layers of color on top of each other. Well, I think that about wraps it up for another Laser Engraving 911 tutorial on how to use powder coating paint to fill your engravings and add some color to them and do all kinds of crazy stuff with it. My channel has been growing, and that's because of you, and I appreciate your support immensely. It means a lot to me. It helps me want to make more videos. So if you liked this video, if you could subscribe, give it a like, and even share it with your friends, that would be great. It helps me out immensely. I think we covered pretty much everything that I can tell you about this process. I haven't seen anyone else do this yet. Pretty sure this is a YouTube first on this process and using powder coating paint to color fill your engraving. I love it when people take, you know, this process and maybe expand upon it, or if you're going to find maybe new materials that you can use this method on. I'd love to hear about them. I tried a bunch of materials that are relevant to what I do here. Like I said before, what I landed on was wood is a great medium to use this on, and acrylic works really nice too. Didn't have much luck with leather or metal. Maybe I could have spent some more time on that, maybe not. But overall, I think the process is pretty straightforward. If you have any questions, you can get a hold of me through the website and email me directly. And also, as promised, I've put together a sample pack of all these powder coat paints for you to purchase if you'd like to try this method at your shop or at home or wherever your laser lives. It's a lot easier than buying 1-pound bags of powder coat paint like I did to go through and do all this experimentation. It's a smaller amount, but like I said in the video, it really doesn't take much to fill an engraving. And for you know, just getting started in this, it's a great little sample pack to have, and it gives you a way to try it out without breaking the bank. So if you'd like to buy one of those sample packs, I'll list the link below in the description. So once again, thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you on the next video.